uh, logging in to this program. Uh, I want to welcome you on behalf of SPSP. This is the last webinar for this year, and I think we've done 11 webinars, and we will be continuing in the webinar series next year. My name is Ken Ross. I am the SPSP webinar coordinator, and I'm on the board. And I personally appreciate you all participating, and hopefully you've enjoyed the webinars that you've logged in on during the year, and hopefully we can continue to come up with new and interesting topics for you all. As I always offer, if you have ideas for webinars that you'd like to hear us present, let us know. My email address is right at the very end, or we have an SPSP email address. Sedgwick Brand Protection sponsored our webinars this year, and I am happy to report that Sedgwick has agreed to continue their sponsorship next year, and I want to thank them very much for their assistance with these programs. We have a couple of programs set. We have specific dates, and I'm working on dates on the third one. In January, we're going to talk about recall litigation, including class actions. Now, this is important for product safety professionals because what you do in developing any corrective action, and whether it's a recall, a repair, replacement, or something less than that, and future incidents occur, you're going to have to defend the adequacy of your actions, and you're going to be the key player in confirming what you did was adequate under the circumstances. So I think we always need to keep in mind potential litigation and the potential that we have to justify the adequacy of what we've done in the future to somebody. And so this is we need to talk about this. And class action lawsuits are a new trend going on these days against companies that have undertaken recalls, and with the claim being that the remedy offered to the consumers is inadequate. So we want to talk about that. In February, the General Product Safety Regulation is now in force, and there are a bunch of technical documentation requirements for people selling in the EU. And we've got an EU expert who's going to talk about those documentation requirements. And then I don't have a specific date, in March or April, we're going to talk with people who are at retailers about and manufacturers about customer education programs in the safety area. So we're working on next year, and you will receive a notice about those programs. So today's program on call centers and customer service operations, which is it's going to be a little bit broader than just that, which you'll see in a moment. We've got two great speakers who are very knowledgeable. Rebeca Sharpe, who you've heard from before. Rebecca is the Director of Product Safety at Best Buy, and her perspective is on the retailer side. And Joe Rizzo, who is at Sedgwick Brand Protection and used to be at Samsung Appliances, and his perspective is on the manufacturer side. Although now being at Sedgwick, you might have both perspectives readily available to you. So, but both of our speakers have involvement in this area, and I will of course be chiming in on this because I've had a lot of experience, mostly bad experience, with call centers and customer service operations that have created big problems for my client. And so I'm particularly attuned to this. And we're going to talk about ideas about how to of issues that need to be talked about. This is not the end of a discussion about this, and everything is, best practices will be identified. There's a lot going on here, and a lot of problems, and a lot of duplication of effort and overlap, and overstatement of safety issues, and understatement, and all kinds of issues that we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about briefly at least. But I suspect that we may be having follow-up webinars on this and to hone in on some narrower topics that fall into this area. So first, again, call centers, customer service, we think of it fairly narrowly, but it's really can be very broad. Not every company does this, but in my years of experience, I've dealt with folks in this area who do all of these things. So it's either when somebody's deciding whether to buy a product and what product to buy, whether it's a manufacturer talking to customer service in a component supplier's customer service function to try to find out what component to buy for their product. Lots of people have questions as we go through the manufacturing, design, manufacturing, retailing process. And so these folks can help in a lot of different areas. I think our focus today will be a bit more on the post-incident situation where the customers are contacting us or customers are posting information about incidents, injuries, and near misses, and how does that work? What should we do? Who's doing what? Who's making decisions on reporting to the CPSC? Who's involved in developing post-sale corrective actions? And once a recall starts, then customer service can help. And also, we would need folks in call centers, customer service to help defend product liability lawsuits if there's a claim that we were negligent, we missed a safety issue, or that we knew about it but didn't do anything about it. So there, a lot of times that folks in this function can get involved actually in the recall litigation setting. So what's gone on over the years is that obviously with the internet, with blogs, with different ways of communicating, there's so much more information out there than there used to be. And it was not easy, but a call center, customer service, even with emails, it was fairly narrow. But now we've got, of course, tons of online reviews in multiple places with various entities. We've got consumer websites, consumer blogs. A lot of people are talking about our products. A lot of people are talking about others' products. We've got bots out there doing things. We've got competitors posting safety concerns on competitors' websites. We've got consumers doing who knows what out there for whatever reason. We've got so the information that we're getting, whether it's a manufacturer, component supplier, a dealer, a retailer, or the CPSC, there's just so much more information that we have to deal with. At the bottom here of this slide, when I'm evaluating certain risks, sometimes particularly for companies who are starting to sell in the U.S., I look on plaintiffs' attorneys' websites to see if they're advertising for clients in a certain area. Sometimes they're identifying things that from their clients that we haven't even heard about before. But also competitors' websites, their lawsuits, their CPSC filings, their recalls, consumer publications. There's so much more information out there than there used to be. And I think both manufacturers and retailers are probably not strategically evaluating where is this information and what do I need to get and how can I get it efficiently without wasting a lot of time. So this subject becomes very complex when we're talking about this. So I think our goals are all the same. We're trying to find accurate, adequate information so that we can all evaluate risk and future probability of any injury or damage or even near misses. So, I mean, it's hard enough to handle the calls, but when you throw in the online reviews and the blogs, it makes it even much more difficult. And we'll talk a little bit about that and about ideas for things that at least we ought to have future conversations about. Now, just on the side of which is fairly direct on call centers, customer service, who are getting contacted by consumers, it is very difficult to know how to follow up and how to evaluate and get the right information from the consumer. Customer service folks are, they try to be helpful to the customer. And they don't want to give them the third degree on what happened and what did you do and did you misuse our product? Did you follow these instructions or why did you do this? They're very reluctant to do anything like that. Yet for us to evaluate a hazard, we really need to know what happened. Why did they do what they did? Was there something wrong with the product? We need to get it back. Just an easy example of this is, in my career, I've dealt a lot with fires, electrical issues, um, burns, things like that. And Don Mays wrote in an 80K recall directory, wrote something interesting. Um, he talked about what do you do when somebody talks about a fire, contacts you, a consumer calls you and says the product caught fire. And we really need to figure out, is it really a fire or not? And what happened? Certainly fires that are contained in the product itself are very different than fires or flames that escape the product. And then when they start talking about burns, that also is very vague. I mean, that ranges from like a first degree burn, which is like a sunburn, to obviously a third degree burn. And so a lot of people say they were burned, say there was a fire, uh, there was an explosion. Lots of people like to say that the products exploded when in fact that's impossible to happen. So to really get to the analysis of this information, we really need to ask a bunch of questions, which I think call centers and customer service folks are fairly uncomfortable asking. So we need to figure out how we can get information and who's going to get that in order to figure out what to do. One last thing, and I'll just show you a couple of slides and then I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca. CPSC in August announced that they are going to adopt a new program involving AI to mine injury trends in broader sources, including social media and online reviews. So, and you can see where this was discussed. There is a website, there's a YouTube video of the priorities hearing where the executive director announced this. I'm trying to get more information on detail on what exactly they're talking about. So, what can be going on here is that we know some retailers, maybe not all, but a goodly number of retailers are evaluating their online reviews using keywords. Um, Manufacturers, this is for discussion, ought to be looking at online reviews. Now, they ought to be having a conversation with the retailer because we really don't want to have everybody reviewing online reviews using different keywords and coming to different conclusions. I mean, that's just not a good thing to have happen. Well, now we're going to have the CPSC starting to scrape data off of online reviews, and who knows what keywords they're going to use? Who knows what they're doing? So it really doesn't make any sense to me that we're going to have the manufacturer, the retailer, and the CPSC all looking at online reviews and blog posts and Google searches and this and that independently and to try to find this information. So we need to have a conversation among all the entities here about who's doing what, and at a minimum, at least that we know how we're going to communicate with each other about these kinds of things. One thing I'll mention is that, of course, we have the retailer reporting program, which I think it's 5 retailers now that are reporting to the CPSC and basic information. I've had the bad experience where the retailer was reporting to the CPSC and they weren't telling me, my client, the manufacturer, about these things. And ultimately it built up, and then the CPSC is asking us, "Well, what are we doing about all these problems?" And our answer is, what problems? We haven't gotten that information. So the one message I can give you is we all have to talk to each other. Certainly manufacturers and the retailers have to talk to each other about what are you doing? What should we be doing? Are you reporting to the CPSC or not? Even if you're not part of the retailer reporting program, the retailer can file a normal 15B with the CPSC and file a full report, even though they have very little information. Well, they shouldn't be doing that without talking to the manufacturer, but that has happened in the past. So anyway, communication between the entities here to have an understanding of where is this information coming from, where is it going to, who's evaluating it, and how do we cooperate to make sure we're not understating issues or missing issues, and we're not overstating a safety problem that doesn't deserve there. And hopefully we'll have a conversation when the CPSC starts this mining activity to make sure that they're in the loop on this. And so we're not all three of us are doing the same thing and doing it inconsistently. Last thing, and I'll turn it over to Rebecca. Um, as with many of the topics we talk about here, I've written an article on this, and I got a lot of my bad experiences identified in there. And my focus was a bit more on customer service and call centers. Didn't really talk too much about online reviews, but that'll be in one of my next articles in the future. So I would suggest you take a look at that because there's a lot of stuff in there that, of course, we're not going to be able to talk about today. And then the last thing, and I'm just going to show you this, we're posting these slides. And I put in some slides from a presentation that Larry Bell from BSH Corporation showed at our fundamentals safety program last year. And I'm sure it's basically a description of BSH's customer service call center function and how they evaluate field monitoring. I commend these slides to you. I'm just going to flip through them. Not going to talk about these at all. They're really good stuff. This is an excellent looking program, and you can take a look at this. They're the role of customer service, how you collect data, where you're getting it from, talking about trigger words in there, collection process, using the trigger words. Anyway, it's really good stuff. Take a look at it later, and maybe we'll have Larry do a webinar in the future, and he can go through this in more detail. So those are his slides, and I'm now getting to next. So let's turn it over to our speakers now. I wanted to sort of throw out some of the issues that we hopefully will have time to talk about, and either today or in the future. And we will look for your questions too, and turn it over to Rebecca.
I'm gonna give it to Joe because this is he's before me in the slides, so I'll let you go first, Joe.
Oh, did I mix that up? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's just perfectly fine. So go ahead, Joe.
Well, that's fine. Go ahead. Joe, are you ready to go or should I go to the next slide?
No, I'm ready to go. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We really appreciate you committing some time to this. I think Ken really set this up pretty well for us. And the slides previously that Ken went through that were Larry's really encompass what I'm going to talk about here today, where customer care and product safety intersect. I think sometimes in most manufacturers, product safety and quality reside in a different area within the company. Now, with my experience, I was fortunate enough to where product safety was part of customer care. So that gave me a really good insight as to what was happening in the market when we talk about field marketing programs and monitoring. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the framework. And of course, every company's framework is a little bit different. And the one area I want to kind of focus on is, even though this is customer care, I look at it as escalation management and risk management for a company. And also, how do you provide the best customer journey or experience for a consumer who's been injured or their product has caused damage to their property? So I'm going to walk you through this framework and talk out loud on some of the questions that came up when we were putting it together. So talking about the initial contact here on the far left. So when a consumer calls into your company's 800 number, you want to first try to figure out, is this a quality issue or is this a safety issue? That's really the two paths that this call is going to take. Now, for our purposes here today, this is going to be the escalation product safety issue path, okay? So your customer calls in And the first thing your frontline agent is going to ask is, were you injured? Was there property damage? Is there a safety risk involved? And of course, those are just really a few questions, but we would have a script, of course, for this. And depending on what that response from the consumer is, that call will get escalated to a team that's trained specifically to handle product safety issues, injuries, or property damage. So, one of the things I suggest to manufacturers is that you have a separate team to handle product safety escalations because that's a different type of training that's required for those people. They're more product savvy. They might have different skills, communication skills, project management skills, empathy skills for that matter. And they might know how to de-escalate better, and they'll be exposed to different training. And also, and from a litigation standpoint, they'll also know what to say and what not to say. Because as we know, things are discoverable, and we want to avoid putting ourselves in that situation where discovery can come into play and be held against us later. So having an escalation team trained specifically for this, I always suggest is a great direction to go. Now, once that escalation agent picks up that call, which is a warm transfer, they're going to validate the claim, find out what the details were, and of course, de-escalate as much as they can on that call. And what we did before when we were at Samsung is we have very different products, and every product has different issues that can occur. So depending on the product and the model, there was a different intake form, if you will, for the agent to collect information to find out, was anybody injured, et cetera, et cetera. So depending on the product, it had a different script. So there are different scripts and different intake forms depending on the product itself and also the type of injury or property damage that had occurred. Okay. So depending on what that escalation is, if there's a media or legal threat involved, then what we would do then is we would then loop in our legal department or our media, excuse me, our PR department to help assess that risk. So internally, we had a team that could quickly get on a call and discuss the situation and what would next steps need to be. Because as you know, how quickly something can escalate on social media, it's amazing how quickly it catches fire, especially if you're a big brand and you have a reputation and, for litigation, it's really important that you manage this particular moment really importantly. So the escalation agent will try to de-escalate, will follow the process to say, okay, we're going to do our next steps, which is we're going to set up for our products. It was an in-home inspection. So that way we can figure out if it's a repairable situation, if there was misuse involved. So we want to do an on-site. And depending on your product, though, that might mean collecting the product, having it shipped back to you. And in that case, you want to develop a chain of custody protocol if something that you're going to do in a reverse logistics situation. So you want to ensure there's no tampering of that product. In case it does go to litigation, you want to make sure you cover yourself there. But now the customer is kind of being taken care of for the moment. And that's when we're meeting now with the legal team and the PR team. And if it's still not clear on what the next moves are to be, we also have another function called a cross-department committee or product safety committee. We'll then get together, and that involves people from marketing, sales, can also involve people from obviously PR, legal, a whole different collection of people to come in and provide their opinion on what the best course of action is here. How do we respond or do we not respond to this threat? So that's the next step. And then once that decision is made, then we route that back to the customer care agent on the escalation team to advise the consumer as to what the next steps are going to be. And so again, now we're going into our in-home inspection. We're going to either collect the product or repair it. And also keep in mind the technicians that are going out to the home, they're also trained very well as to what to say and what not to say. So you don't want your technicians showing up saying, Oh, yeah, we've seen lots of these all the time. Oh, yeah, these catch fire every day. You don't want that, obviously, right? So you have to have some training for your technicians and a script when they go out to meet at your consumer's home. So now let's assume that we had to collect the product, that there was a potential defect. So what we'll do is we'll either provide repair, but in this situation, it's a defect. So we're going to have to provide a refund or replace the product. And so our agent will work with the consumer and figure out what they would like, what works for them best, and take care of them on a financial perspective. Now we get down to that product. So that product is now going to be returned to a lab, either our lab or a third-party lab, depending on the lab's capabilities, where we're going to do root cause analysis, forensics. Depending on the capabilities of the lab, you may need to outsource to a third-party lab to help you with that testing. And of course, guys, I think everyone understands why that's so important because you're going to have to either defend yourself or be prepared to settle. One or the other is going to happen here. Because, like Ken mentioned, there are attorneys, there are firms out there that are looking for these opportunities that are scouring those public facing safety data web-based websites like CPSC or NICE or NTSA or NHTSA, for example. They're looking for those, opportunities. So the next thing is going to be, okay, we have our product back. We understand there's an issue with it. Legal now gets involved. And sometimes that involves obviously in-house counsel as well as outside counsel as well to help determine what the best process is for going forward. And then the next logical step is going to be, okay, now guys, do we have a bigger problem? Is this just a one-off? Is this an anomaly? So we need to do some deeper diving to see if we have other issues like this. And why I think it's so important to have product safety intertwined with customer care is you're the first one to see this. Because in traditional setups in companies, product safety sometimes is the last to find out what's going on. But when you're embedded within the customer care department, you immediately know what's happening. So you get that canary in the coal mine quicker, much quicker than you would if you're getting it, secondhand later on after something, blows up. But then it really comes down to, okay, how big is the problem? So you really have to dive into that. And then there has to be that decision. Do we have to report this to the CPSC? Is this definitely a risk, a safety risk, or is this something else? Is this misuse? So that's a decision that has to be made internally. And then ultimately, guys, it's really to protect the consumer, protect the company, the brand, the reputation, but it's also the right thing to do. And it's good business to have this closed loop framework. And of course, this is very high level, and we could go in real deeply into systems, how you monitor different channels besides just your 800 number. There's all kinds of software and proprietary systems that can be built to help scrape those websites, to feed them into a system to be able to do a risk assessment. So I'm going to stop there, Ken and Rebecca.
Joe, I want to, before Rebecca goes, Joe, how do you interact with retailers during the process?
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. That's a great question. So most of the time, obviously, our retailers are our partners, right? We need them to help sell product. And the one thing I found interesting at Samsung was our retailers were on top of it. They were all right there. And they would send me a note saying, hey, we noticed this happened. Can you please investigate? And so our retailers were sending it to us before we even reached out to them. But it was a partnership because we do want to make sure, yeah, we want to sell product, of course, but if there is a safety issue, that product, it has to be addressed. And you don't want to put your partners at risk for them having to sell product. So what we would do is we would do a full investigation of that product, reach out to that consumer, find out what happened, pull together a report, and then share it back with our retailer partner just to let them know that this is not a safety issue. We can continue selling the product. No need to take action on this issue at this time.
Okay. All right. Let me turn it over to Rebecca, but I'll throw out one comment on that. Many manufacturers now in their instruction manuals have right there on the cover in really big words, don't contact the retailer, contact the manufacturer. So I don't know. So do you have a job to do, Rebecca, in this area?
I say you need bigger words because they're calling the retailers all the time. I bought it at Best Buy, or I bought it wherever, and that's who I'm going to call because that's where I know I got it. I got a person there. Um, I just want to comment on something before I go into my side that Joe had mentioned, which is a partnership with the retailers. And it's important for retailers to keep their manufacturing partners involved and informed when incidents do happen on a regular basis. So whether that's depending on the volume, whether it's a week or every 2 weeks or a month, but that regular cadence of here's everything we've heard, regardless of whether we think it's serious or not, but because we don't want to hold back and filter anything that should go to the manufacturer, and then they can decide what to look at. And of course, they're getting information, hopefully, from other responsible retailers. So there we'll see definitely more of a trend if there is one with all that information coming in. And I know Ken and I have talked about this, that if it does, and I know this is a later question, but if it does come to reporting, manufacturers have to know right away. Retailers, it's not best practice to involve a regulator without having the manufacturer aware. So my slide here is just talking about different methods of detection and triage. Joe had talked about kind of scraping tools and funnels to get online product reviews, to get the calls from the call center, to get the chats, or emails or whatever people, however they decide to contact a retailer. And you can have sort of a more agent driven or a more AI driven. And that's where we're kind of seeing things go to that wave of the future, but also want to talk about that each have their sweet spots and their weaknesses. And if you do have an agent driven model, which the keywords they're trained to listen to those, I got hurt, I got cut, something caught on fire, as Ken said, explode is very popular, and it's almost never an explosion of the product. To know, okay, now I have to have a different set of questions. And what some people do is they'll have kind of a radio button or a yes no, and if the agent thinks this is a product safety issue, they'll click yes, and that opens up a different set of questions to say, okay, was medical attention sought? Who was injured? Was there damage beyond the product? All of this. So not just personal injury, but also property damage. And then to get that information. And the pro of this is you've got the person on the phone, the agent is well trained, and they can ask those questions in the moment and get that information as detailed as they can. Also have the ability to escalate to that higher level tier, the separate team, the escalation team. Joe had mentioned a highly skilled partners who know exactly what to say and what not to say. So that's very helpful, and they can just transfer that. Also, they're empowered to satisfy the customer. It's like, oh, can we take steps to get that back from you? Of course, it's more work if it's something large, but if it's something that can be sent, or I'm really sorry to hear that you had that problem. Let's do a refund, or let's get you a gift card or something to kind of de-escalate the issue or the customer impact and still work with them to get the information. The tough part about that is if you have higher turnover in your call centers, it's this constant training model, right? I mean, and of course, that's part of any call center's constant training, but you might get somebody who is really good, somebody who's really fresh, who's really familiar with the keywords, somebody who's new to a call center. So you've got that kind of variability with the people. Also, I mean, let's be honest, call centers are judged on handle time, right? You want to get those turns and you can't be lingering on the phone. So the realities of a call center are also competing priorities. Because if you do get into a safety issue, you're going to want more detail. And now it's just, I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's realistic, right? I've got enough information. I'm just going to pass this on. I've said it was a product safety issue. The product safety team will take care of it, but we don't have complete information. So just the reality of that.
Can I interrupt for a second and
Yes.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
On the training, the manufacturer side is hard enough to
Yeah.
train these folks to know enough, to have enough technical information to know how to ask, what questions to ask, although that's part of the
Yeah.
script that's being created. But your people, you guys sell thousands of products. How do
Exactly.
how do your people know enough about a product, or do you have certain checklists for like, these are for refrigerators and these are for TVs and
Right.
these are for stereo? I mean, do you
Yeah.
train
It's
particular to the product?
We don't train particular product because there are tens of thousands of things that we sell. That's exactly it. So we can't have a script for every one where maybe, for a manufacturer, you have large appliances, you have small appliances, you have this and such. So it's more of a generalized keywords as opposed to product types. And, taking a look at the slide that you had put up that Don Mays had with all the questions about fire, those are so particular. Did it really catch on fire? Were there flames? Was there smoke? Was it just a burning smell? That level of detail, we can't train a level of agent to that for everything because there are so many different products and so many different situations.
Right.
So we're just trying to capture the kind of the big data and the fact that it happened. Also, what we found is if people are missing things, because of course you have to do a check on the nose, right? Somebody said, no, it's not a product safety issue, or they forgot to check the box, or maybe they asked the questions, but they didn't, there's not a direct indicator that you can report on. You still have to have a fail-safe to go back through those cases that were not flagged as product safety to do a keyword search. And so that's kind of where we're going to get more AI driven. But what we found is what can happen, I should say, is if you train agents, hey, you keep missing this. This is a product safety issue. You keep missing this. They're going to check everything yes, right? Because it's like, I don't want to, I keep getting in trouble because I'm missing these. I'll just do everything yes, and the product safety team can filter it later because I don't want to miss anything. So it's this, and Ken was talking about too few, too many false positives, you're missing things. So it's this delicate balance on training and just getting that in. And when you have a ton of products, it makes it more difficult. So the more AI driven, and there's not a right or wrong way, it's just depending on the volume and the needs of the retailer. But when you have a more AI driven solution, and this does take technology, which I put in one of the cons, it is a spend to do systems, to build systems, and Joe mentioned that as well, to scrape, to compile. If you have a keyword search that runs on all of this data that you've collected from your funnel, you can still train the agents on it, but this will pick it up and spit out reports with keywords that are highlighted, or here's the transcript, or here's a summary, or some sort of tool that you can pay for to say, you need to look at this case and this is why. That can all be automatically flagged and sent to a product safety team or an escalation team to say, here are the ones you need to take a look at. And that way you're not relying on individual training of agents to remember what to say. It just flags it and sends. And I guess I'm doing pros and cons kind of together on this one, but you can have AI hallucinations. You can false positives. It can pick up a keyword that's not there, or somebody says, Amazon Fire TV, but it picks up on fire. So you have to make sure that you're filtering those out. But if you do the initial sweep, send it to a team who's highly trained, then you're doing less training and they're more aware of what to do as far as reaching back out to the customer. Also, and again, that's my third bullet point, the product safety team or the specialized outreach team generally in customer care can reach back out and ask those specific questions. This also might delay it though, because if first you find it, then a human says it's important, then a human tells another human to call back out to the customer, there could be a delay. But one thing that I wanted to mention as far as AI and just different methods of where you get your information, we find that online reviews are sort of the most amazing to read. And I think it's human nature when you know that anybody is reading your post and your post is public, that it can be more elaborate, let's just say. And I think that it's much more objective when customers complain about their product like no one's watching. So you might get better detail when they're talking to an individual person or interacting with an individual person as opposed to posting a review and like, look what happened to me, right? So you do have to take that into account. Also, one thing that hasn't been mentioned that some retailers may rely upon is a claims department, insurance claims department. So if it's a personal injury or a property damage that rises to a certain level, that it's beyond just a paper cut or it's beyond just a burn mark on a counter, then maybe that's when the claims department gets involved. And then there's that handoff from the responsibility of the product of the customer care team to a group of people who is absolutely specially trained to ask very specific questions. And those remarks, especially if, as Joe said, litigation is hinted at, and they are not under any time call handling thing. This is their job to get every piece of detail so they can either defend the case or pass it on to the retail or to the manufacturing partner. But that's also a tool in the toolbox people have, is that ultimate escalation to legal and claims. So it's sort of what your company is having to deal with, the easiest ways to get it efficient, the accuracy of the information, and again, passing that information along on a regular basis to your manufacturing partners. You can work together to figure out, can you get the product back? Does the manufacturer need to do additional testing? What themes have they seen with all of their retail partners? So it's a really back and forth. We don't want to, we're not us and them. We're both trying to keep the customer safe and identify risks as soon as possible. So I will,
Rebecca, let me
yeah,
ask you a
yeah, of
question for you.
course.
On the training of your call center agents,
Yes.
do you do that in person, online? How often? Who provides the training? Do you ever invite a manufacturer in to
Oh,
talk to the call center folks and say, hey, here are the things we're particularly interested in having you ask if a customer calls you? Do you ever do anything like that?
well, that is something that I will be bringing up next quarter. I'm not aware that we have manufacturers come in, but that is an excellent suggestion. So, and there are various methods of training, and I don't want to go into all of them on this call, but there's definitely continuous training on different methods. But I do like that a lot, Ken. So,
Yeah, I've had manufacturers say, gee, we've offered the retailer to come in and give them an orientation and have a conversation about this, and they've never been taken up on it. Now, I can fully understand thousands of products. You'd spend all your time just getting orientation from manufacturers. So, but
right.
for those purposes, it could be useful. But that leads me to the
Yeah,
next question, which we've talked about before, is since you guys can't be the experts on these products and maybe don't know all the questions to ask and maybe could miss a potential safety issue that's a so-called near miss, for example. I mean, nobody got hurt, no damage occurred,
yeah,
but they could have been hurt if they had done something, if they had, as they're doing something wrong with the product. Um, why wouldn't you just you've identified the safety issue, either through your keywords
yeah.
electronically or by talking to the consumer. Why wouldn't you just send that to the manufacturer and let them do the more extensive follow-up, the kinds of things Joe's talking about,
Yeah.
with experienced people who know the product much better?
That's a great question. And definitely the manufacturers we work with, they take it seriously, due diligence. However, we can't, as a retailer, we can't guarantee what actions a manufacturer is going to take. And if something does have a product safety risk and they haven't reported it, retailers are still responsible to report hazardous products or situations because we are in the chain of distribution, right? I mean, it's not that we can just put all of the responsibility or liability on the manufacturer. Great if we could, but we still have a duty to report as a retailer if something to the potential of harming people. So that's why.
Well, we could have a legal discussion on that, and I
Yes.
could get some of the CPSC lawyers to talk about that because, I mean, there is a way, I believe, to send that to the manufacturer, have the manufacturer do what's appropriate and follow up with you and tell you, yeah, we've looked into this in detail. It's not a safety issue or it's not reportable. And they tell you that, and I don't believe you have any further responsibility. You don't know more than the manufacturer does. They're the ones who talk to the customer. And one thing that always concerns me is that if your people are talking to the customer, decide it's a safety issue, then you send it to the manufacturer, and then we've got to go call the customer again because we need more information. Customer is going to start to get mad. They don't want to have all these conversations with people about what happened here. And so sometimes you get one chance to talk to a customer about this issue, and after that, they don't want to talk to anybody. And so it'd be nice if we could do it in a way that gets all the information that's needed. But I don't, again, I'm not criticizing what you guys are doing. I'm just opening this up for a
Yeah,
conversation because I think there's some duplication of effort, some inconsistencies. We're missing things, we're overstating things. And again, from a manufacturing side, I said, talk to your retailers,
yeah,
sit down, have a coffee, and talk through what do you want to do, and
right.
that's the best you can do. And it's going to be different if we're talking about, a lawnmower, for example, or a power tool versus, something a lot more benign. We'll say like a refrigerator. I
Right.
mean, it's just different what we're talking about and the risks that we have out there. So it could differ from manufacturer to manufacturer also.
Right. Right. And it would be
Yeah.
great if every retailer follow or every manufacturer followed up with us on every safety case, but we can't guarantee that's going to happen. So,
Yeah,
and
Joe, you got
yeah, go
something to
ahead,
add
Joe.
on that one? Yeah,
Please.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, you're right, guys. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it behooves the manufacturer to have a relationship with the Rebecca's of the world, right? And those product safety departments. You have to, right? Because of course the sales and marketing group has a relationship, right? The buyers and the merchandisers, but the product safety, sometimes they don't have that. And so it really depends on your manufacturer too. Some manufacturers don't want you to be that involved with the retailer. Well, in my experience, I thought it was a good thing to be involved because we're talking about consumer safety ultimately, and also brand and reputation for both the retailer and the manufacturer. And I know those conversations can sometimes be dicey between the manufacturer and the retailer product safety because, to be honest, right, it can lead to a product or SKU being shut down, and then all of a sudden sales says, what happened? What kind of conversation went down with you and Best Buy? What did you tell Rebecca, right? But I think the ultimate relationship is more important than to worry about that at that point. I think having the relationship, being open with your partner, is really the best practice. And if manufacturers aren't doing that, they're really missing an opportunity to serve their customer and consumer at the end of the day.
And I think one thing that's very important also in establishing that relationship is sometimes it's difficult for retailers to know that the information is getting to the right person at the manufacturer too, because the
Yeah,
contact they might have is through their category lead or their merchant or whatever you call them at your place.
certainly.
And they have the salesperson, but if they tell the salesperson, they might not be well versed on how to get it to the state, right? So you have to know
Exactly, Rebecca.
who you've got to make sure the information is going to the right place.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Rebecca,
Yes,
can the intake form for safety escalations be incorporated into the retailer's customer service processes?
yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
and
Mhm.
Okay, you've answered that, huh? Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now
It's part
it's
of that. Yeah, the
unclear the
intake.
intake form. Is it
Yeah,
your intake form, I guess?
yeah. So the intake form again, like I said, you see that it's a product safety issue, and you pop it open, and then you can fill in the form, and then it heads right over to the correct team. So yep, it can be answered.
This actually the question. I think I'll change it slightly. It looks like the intake form would be something you receive from the manufacturer. Here are the things. So the manufacturer is
Oh,
giving you. Here are the things we would like you to ask. If you're talking to the customer, here are the things we'd like you to ask. So then the question is,
well,
can that be incorporated into your customer service process?
so I would say think about all the manufacturers that we deal with, and if every manufacturer had a different intake form, it would be sort of a nightmare to say, oh well, Samsung wants this, and they want this, and they want that. It's just it's not able to be managed. So that's why we have an intake form with what we have gathered over years of what's important information, and it's just a standard form.
Okay. All right. In requesting the product back for review, that's always
Mhm.
very controversial. You, the retailer, you're not going to ever ask for a product back. I'm assuming that's correct. It's only the
Sometimes it
manufacturer.
depends. I'll give you the lawyer it depends answer. So
Okay.
but
So
it's
you
difficult because again, the reverse supply chain moves very quickly, right? So to
Yeah.
say what store is that in or where is that, if it's at the customer's in their hands. So it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
So Joe, when do you need the product back? And And certainly a lot of times the customer isn't going to bother trying to send it back. And are you going to send somebody to their now for one of a Samsung products, it might be worth it to send somebody, a local dealer to the home to look at it
Right.
or to retrieve it if it's can be retrieved. So uh,
Right. And sometimes too, guys, and Ken, you've probably had this situation where a manufacturer wants to retrieve that product back, even if it's like, let's get away from like the appliances, even if it's just a smaller product, because that product could find its way to social media. That product could find its way to an attorney like Ken Ross, who would love to have that in his hands. And so sometimes the manufacturer will try to get that product back quickly and resolve that quickly with a refund exchange because there's a risk by leaving that product out there. It's kind of risky as a manufacturer. And if you've seen pictures of that product, if the consumer or customer showed you, you want to get that out of there quickly, even though you might not be able to identify if it's a defect or how it happened. But it's better to get it out of the hands of the consumer or the customer, resolve that, and then take it in for your analysis. Seems to be the best practice.
now, have either of you been involved in situations where your folks would contact the customer and then have a Zoom call to have the customer show you the product and say, "Well, what were you doing when this incident occurred, or a near miss,
Yeah.
or to show me what part of the product did this, or anything like that." Have any of you ever done that?
Yep, yep. We did that at good old Samsung, and we would send the consumer a link, and basically through their phone, and their phone would then obviously turn into a camera, and then we would guide them through the questions. And what's great also, it acts as a recording, right? So we have a record of it, but we can see exactly if, let's say, a unit, something was burnt, we can see kind of get an idea of how it was burnt. If the burn is on the exterior, on the interior, it kind of helps us make the decision of, okay, this is non-repairable, which is great in a sense because we can take care of the customer right there on the spot. Because as Rebecca mentioned, that agent is empowered to do any kind of compensation right there and fix it. And let's say there's minor damage, or something got burnt on the countertop, whatever it might be. Okay, we can quickly reimburse you for that. So that agent is empowered because of that video link. They can make that determination. Now, if it's an internal burn, or sometimes they smell a component that might be burning, that one's more difficult. And that's when we'll have to send someone out there to do an inspection on that product. But the link though, Ken, yeah, absolutely. Very helpful. Good customer
Rebecca,
experience.
Rebecca, do you guys ever do that?
We don't do live links, but we do ask for videos and pictures, but I'm not aware of any Zoom call directly with the customer.
Okay. 'Cause a lot of times, and this is where customer service gets involved too, I've had problems where customers call after they buy the product, they call the retailer and they're trying to set up the product. And they can't figure out how to do it. The instructions are unclear or they're just dumb, one of the two. And they call and ask, and the customer service person, I mean, bless their hearts, they're trying to satisfy the customer. I mean, that is customer satisfaction, right? That's what they're trying to do. So they try to help them, even though they probably don't even know how to do it themselves. And it doesn't get done right. And then problems can happen. So, having a Zoom call concerning, no, you press this button over here and that one there, would be helpful. Now, I don't know if manufacturers are doing that. Other than, Joe, your products are a little bit different than if we're talking some smaller, cheaper products. It may be a little harder to do. But certainly there's an ability to do that and to get good information from customers, and to know better what's going on. Rebecca, in some of those situations, when would you refer a customer to the manufacturer? In what situations would you do that?
Well, yeah, if they're having trouble like using the product, or they're having confusion, but you have to understand we're Best Buy, so we have Geek Squad, and we'd be more than happy to send an agent out to your house, right? That type of thing. But it's if they have complex questions about the product, or they just don't understand something in the manual, yeah, it is difficult. We don't have all the manuals sitting in front of us, that type of thing. So
Right.
manufacturers know their product best.
Okay. Now, of course, we were talking before about, at least you and I, about privacy laws and how, you can't, you'd have to, the the retailer, if they contact you,
Mhm.
you have to get their permission to give their
Mhm.
name
Exactly.
to the manufacturer
Yep.
and suggest, here's a number you can call at the
Yeah, and
manufacturer. I
that's
don't
what we
think we
do.
can help you.
Yeah.
Here's what you
Yep.
can do and let them do the
Yep.
follow-up. And
So we,
certainly if the customer doesn't is just wants to call and complain and and doesn't go any further, or you want the product back and they won't return it, there's nothing we can do about it. And that's one of the frustrations. And I've had conversations with the CPSC about it, about the difficulties of evaluating online reviews.
mhm.
Yeah, every online review, the product exploded, caught on fire. I was burned. I had, I mean, I've had the same kind of incident involving a product where, in one case, somebody got a headache because they fell on the ground, and another one, it was a traumatic brain injury, and it was the same thing. So the overstatement, the exaggeration, it's really hard to get beyond that and to try to figure it out without making the customer mad. And so that is just one of the frustrations that the CPSC understands. They understand that the difficulties of even evaluating and confirming at least the online reviews. Um, Re Rebecca, what do you think if the manufacturer said to you, "We will evaluate your online reviews. It's not necessary for you guys to do it." What would you do? And
We would
I'm
still,
not asking on Best Buy's behalf
no,
here, just
I
in
understand.
general. I don't want you
Yeah,
to
yeah,
release any confidential
no.
information, but if the manufacturer is going to do that, do you need to do it?
I would say a retailer should still review their own online reviews because again, you don't know what keywords the manufacturer is using. You don't know, if they're following up or not, or you can't vet somebody else's practice. And so in order to keep your own reporting obligations, your reputation, you're making sure that you're taking care of the customer, it's still best practice to review your own reviews and not farm that out.
Okay, but if both parties are doing it, at least then have a conversation about what does this mean? Uh,
Uh,
I think
We,
that
we would
that
do we would
For
do that
sure.
in any way that we'd find a product safety issue. So it's not just limited to online review. It'd be anything.
Okay. I mean, I think the further conversation about the retailer reporting program is in order, particularly because the CPSC is adopting these new procedures. I personally think the program uh, doesn't add much value at all because there's not enough information that goes to the CPSC, uh, and there's no follow-up, and many times, and I've seen it many times non-safety related issues are being reported to the CPSC. So now the CPSC has not expanded the program, and I wonder whether they'll just get rid of it altogether because I don't see much value to it. I will say from a manufacturer standpoint, if you're dealing with a retailer that's part of the retailer reporting program, insist or have a confirmation that they are going to tell you everything they've reported to the CPSC so that the CPSC is not more knowledgeable about these situations than you are. That can come back and bite you, and that's not good. Uh, so
Mm. And
um, Go
Ken,
ahead,
and
Joe.
Ken, if I could just add too, guys, I mean, depending on the size of your customer care department and your escalation team size, I mean, there are organizations, I mean, with out there, I should say manufacturers that are monitoring online, reviews, syndicated data, looking at CPSC saferproducts.gov and actually responding to each one of those saferproducts.gov complaints directly to the consumer in an effort to preempt anything that could potentially get under the purview of the CPSC. And in my experience, and Ken, maybe yours, that CPSC seems to like that you're proactive with those complaints, that you've reached out to the consumer, validated, verified if it was a real issue, and then close the loop with that consumer. So that's something that we were doing. So every single complaint received a follow-up call to find out what actually happened and why you reported it, and try to investigate and ultimately try to prevent that from happening again. Because that was a
Yeah.
really good way to mitigate risk too.
So, if there's one message to take away today, it's that, there's no right way or wrong way to do these things. It's all keyed into the product, the risk you have, the risk you're willing to assume, the relationship you have through the distribution network, and just, sit down and figure out where this information is coming from, who's getting it, who's best to get it, and then have a conversation, whether it's with your component suppliers, your dealers, the retailers, uh, installers. I mean,
Mhm.
I've done work over the years, so with water heaters, for example. The installers have a lot of information that relate to safety that they could have of things they see in people's houses, or troubleshooting they do to repair products after they're sold. So there's a lot of information out there. I think we really want to capture as much as we can, but we don't want to miss it. But we want to try to figure out how to not duplicate efforts and get the right information, and then be able to make rational decisions that are the best for the consumer and the company, and satisfy the CPSC. So this is for more conversation later on. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Joe. I
Yes.
appreciate your
Thank you,
great
Ken. Thanks,
insights
Rebecca.
there. Hopefully, we'll have more conversations about that. Just a second. Oops. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't get to that last. Uh, oh, they want to know how, if a manufacturer does an online review, how can the manufacturer get in touch with the customer? You can't.
It can't.
I mean, I don't
Right.
think you can't. Yeah, I don't. That's one
No.
of the problems of online reviews. We don't know
Yeah.
how to
Yes.
contact them. So if they
Big
don't
problem.
put their information in there or don't contact you directly, you cannot contact them. Another
That's right.
frustration,
Very
in this
much.
area. So anyway, thank you all very much. We appreciate it, and have a good day. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye,
Bye
guys.
then.